Hi guys, we're gonna go over some factoring problems. So you want to have out on your desk this sheet. We're gonna be working on it momentarily. Before we do so though, I do want to go over just one thing and what we're trying to do when we're using Snowflake. So for a moment, let's just look at this problem, x plus 3 times x minus 2. When you see this problem, there are a couple of things that should spark up in your head that we covered earlier into the year, which is that you want to be tempted to multiply these two things together. And the way that we do that, if you remember from the beginning of the year, is you'll distribute your x to both terms inside, and you'll be multiplying. So we went over this a couple weeks ago, but just as a quick reminder, so I would take x times x to get an x squared. Then I'll take x times a negative 2 to get a negative 2x. Now that I've distributed that x, I'm done with it. I'm going to distribute this positive 3. So next I would distribute the positive 3 to both of those terms inside of the second set of parentheses. So I would distribute 3 times x would give me a positive 3x. And 3 times a negative 2 would give me a negative 6. Once I was done, once I got to this point, I would now combine my like terms. So x squared stays the same. It has no terms to combine with. A positive 2x, or sorry, a negative 2x plus a 3x would give me plus a 1x, and then a minus 6 at the end, and I would be done. When we're using Snowflake and when we're factoring, or when we're using Snowflake to factor, what we're trying to do is we're starting here, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what are those two things that we're multiplying together to end up at this place? So that's what Snowflake is going to help us figure out. In the end, all of your answers should be two binomials that are being multiplied together. So you're going to have one thing in parentheses times another thing in parentheses. And so we're going to be using Snowflake to go from here and work backwards is our end goal. So let's look at number 1. I'm just going to pull the information that you have on your note card from last time over and off to the side. So my first step when I'm factoring using Snowflake is I want to fill out my Snowflake. So I'm going to start off by finding and identifying what is A, what is B, what is C. In this case, my A value is 1, B is 12, and C is 32. Okay, so from here I'm going to start to fill out that Snowflake. I'll draw it in. My A values are going to go in these two places, so I'll have a 1 here and a 1 here. My A times C, 1 times 32, will give me 32. And my B value is 12. Okay, so I'm almost done filling out the Snowflake. Next I'm going to factor out A times C. So A times C I know is 32. I'm going to list all of my factors of 32. So if I think I've got 1 and 32, 2 goes into 32 since it's an even number, so 2 times 16. 3 doesn't go into 32, 4 goes into 32 8 times. 5 doesn't go into 32, 6 doesn't go into 32, 7 doesn't go into 32, and then we're back at 8. So I've listed all of my potential factors of 32. Okay. My last step is I want to figure out which of these factors will add to B. I'm just going to scooch this over a little bit. So if I add 1 plus 32, I get 33. 2 plus 16, I get 18. And 4 plus 8, here we go, I get to 12, which was my B value. So my two factors are going to be 4, and they're going to be 8. So in my Snowflake, I'm going to fill in that 4 and that 8. Okay, and from there, now I can get to my last step of Snowflake. I can finally get to these two binomials. So I'm going to set up my two binomials. One thing I notice is that to get an x squared here, I had to have an x in both of my sets of parentheses here. So here, instead of having an x squared, I have an a squared. I'm going to start off by just putting an a in each set of parentheses. Okay, let's focus just for right now on half of my snowflake. So I'm going to cover up part of it. I'm just going to look at this 1/4. So when you're going from your snowflake to your binomial, the number in this position is going to be your coefficient to a. It's going to go in front of a. So since I have a 1 here, I'm going to put a 1 in front of my a. The number on the bottom is the number that I'm either adding or subtracting from this a term. If this number is positive, like it is here with this 4, I'm going to have a plus 4 at the end. If it had had a negative in front, then I would put a minus 4. Let's look at my other set. So I'm going to go ahead and cover up the other half. So over on this side, I've got a 1/8. That 1, just like it did on the other side, so the number in this position goes in front of a. So I'm going to put a 1 here. And this 8, since it's positive, I'm going to put a plus 8 here in the end. And once I've done that, those will be my 2 factors. Okay. Just really quickly, you can always check your work to this problem so that you can guarantee a 100% on your quizzes and on your tests. If I were to check my work, all I have to do is multiply through. So I'm going to distribute my 1a to both terms. 1a times 1a gives me an a squared. A times 8 gives me a plus 8a, sorry. And then I'll distribute my 4 to both terms inside parentheses. 4 times 1a will give me a plus 4a. 4 times 8 will give me a plus 32. And if I combine my 8a plus 4a, I'll have a squared plus 12a plus 32. And so I should end up exactly back to where I started. That's my check that I got this correct. Okay, I'm going to do one more example, then you'll have an opportunity to either go on your own or keep following along with me and do a couple more together. So let's look at number 2. So number 2, same exact starting point as number 1. I'm going to start off by filling out my snowflake. To do that, I'm going to identify what is A, what is B, and what is C. In this case, my A value is 1, a 1x squared. My B value is a positive 5, and my C value is a negative 24. Okay, so I'm going to set up my snowflake. A is going to go out in front, so here and here I'm going to put my 1. A times C, 1 times a negative 24 will leave me with a negative 24. And then my B value is going to go down at the bottom. Okay, my next step is to factor out A times C. Oh, sorry, this should be a 5. 5. I'm going to factor out my negative 24. So I'm going to ignore the negative just momentarily, just pay attention to that 24. I can have my factors 1 times 24. I could have 2 times 12. I could have 3 times 8. This one has a lot of factors. I could have 4 times 6. 5 doesn't go into 24, and then I'm back at 6, so I've listed out all of my factors. Okay, so I know I have a negative here, and I have a positive number here. In order to multiply to a negative number, just like last time, I'm going to put this up on the board, or this will be up on the board so that you can look at it. A negative times a positive gives me a negative number, or a positive times a negative gives me a negative. So my factors have to be different signs. One of them has to be positive, one of them has to be negative. So I'm going to just list out these factors a second set of times to see so that I can add those negatives in. So 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. So for the first 4, I'm going to give the numbers on the left a negative. For the second 4, I'm going to give the numbers on the right a negative. And now I'm going to be adding these guys all up. Okay, so -1 plus 24 would give me 23. Well, that doesn't add to a +5, so these guys are out. -2 plus 12 would give me 10. Doesn't add to b, so these guys are out. -3 plus 8 gives me a +5. Oh, this one matches. In this case, I can be done. If you went and added the rest of these, none of these other ones would add to 5. So I'm going to put my -3 here, my +8 here. Okay, almost done. So I've filled out my snowflake. I've done the hard part. Now I just have to put this as a binomial. So I'm going to set up my parentheses. In this case, I had an x squared, so I need an x here, and I need an x here. I'm going to cover up half of my snowflake in that first half. Sorry about that. In that first half, I've got a 1 over a -3. So the number over here is always going to go in front of my x. I'm going to put a 1. Here I have a -3, so I'm going to put -3. Okay, going to look at the other side of my snowflake. Looking at this number is the one that's going to go in front of my x, so I'm going to put a 1 in front of my x. Then I have a +8, so I'm going to put a +8 here at the end. Okay, let's just go through and check our work, make sure we've got it right. To do that, I'm going to distribute out the numbers in the first set of the parentheses to the second set. 1x times 1x will give me a 1x squared. 1x times a +8 will give me a +8x. I've distributed that 1x, so now it's done. I'm going to distribute this -3. -3 times a 1x will give me a -3x. And -3 times a +8 will give me a -24. Okay, lastly, I'm looking to combine like terms. 8x minus 3x will give me a +5x. Bring down the rest. And I'll end up exactly where I started, all the way at the top. Okay, so your goal in these problems is to get to this point. What are your 2 binomials? You can check your work as you go. If you would like to press pause and fast forward to check your answers at the end, if you want to see how you do on your own, you're more than welcome to. If you feel like you need a couple more examples, I'm going to go over number 3 and number 4 together. Okay, so if you're stopping, go ahead and press pause. Let's look at number 3 and 4, if you're continuing ahead with me. So for number 3, just like last time, I'm looking to snowflake, so I'm going to set up my snowflake to start to factor. First, I'm going to identify what is A, what is B, what is C. In this case, A is 1, my B value is 11, and my C value is 18. So I'm going to set up my snowflake, fill in my blanks. A is 1, so my A values are going to go here and here. I'm going to put my 1. My A times C, 1 times 18, will give me 18. And my B value is 11. Okay, now I'm going to factor out my A times C. A times C I know is 18. So let's list our factors. Go ahead and pause to find those factors. You should get 1 times 18, 2 times 9, and 3 times 6 should be your 3 sets of factors. Since 11 is positive and 18 is positive, I don't have to worry about any negatives. I'm just going to add to see which ones equal my b value. So 1 plus 18 will give me 19. 2 plus 9 will give me 11, and 3 plus 6 will give me 9. The set that added to my b value, so add to b, was my 2 and 19. So I'm going to fill those in, 2 and 9. I'm going to fill those into my blank spots. My last step is to set up my factors. So I'm going to set up my two binomials. In this case, I have a p squared, so I'm going to put a p at the front of each of those sets of parentheses. Looking at the first half of my snowflake, I've got a 1 and a 2. So the 1 comes first, it goes in front of the p. This positive 2 is going to come after. I'm going to put a plus 2. It's really important that you get that plus sign. Looking at the other half of my snowflake, I've got a 1 and a 9. The 1 on top comes first, it goes in front of p. Then I have a positive 9, so I'm going to do a plus 9 at the end. Okay, let's just check our work really quickly. Distributing out, we should end up at our same starting point back at this equation. So 1p, I'm going to distribute it to the second set of parentheses. 1p times 1p will give me a 1p squared. 1p times 9 will give me a positive 9p. I've distributed this guy, so now I'm done with him. I'm going to distribute my 2 next. 2 times 1p will give me a positive 2p. And 2 times 9 will give me a positive 18. Next, I'm going to combine my like terms, so I've got a 1p squared plus 9p plus 2p will give me an 11p plus 18 at the end. I ended up exactly where I was at the beginning, which means that this is correct. I can box my answer. Okay, we're going to go through one more together. Let's take a look at number 4. So I'm going to start off by setting up that snowflake. First, I need to figure out what is A, what is B, what is C. Go ahead and find those values. A should be 1, B should be 8, and C should be 7. I'm going to set up my snowflake and fill in those blanks. So my A values go here, 1 and 1. A times C, 1 times 7 is 7. And my B value is 8, so it's going to go down here. I'm going to set up and factor out A times C, so A times C is 7. If I list out my factors of 7, sorry about that, take a moment and think, what multiplies to 7? And the answer is just 1 times 7. Again, I don't have to worry about negatives since both of these numbers are positive. 1 plus 7 will give me 8, so I end up at my B value, which means that I can write in these values here, 1 and 7. Okay, from here I'm going to set up my two binomials. My variable in this problem is a v, so I'm going to put a v at the front of each. And just look at half of my snowflake at a time. So if I look at this first half, I've got a 1 in the front, so 1 is going to go in front of v. And then I have a positive 1, so I'm going to put a plus 1. From there, I'm going to cover up my second half. 1 times, or sorry, not 1 times 7. My 1 comes front, so I'm going to put a 1 in front of my v. And then I have a positive 7, so I'm going to put a plus 7. Let's go ahead and just check our work, make sure that I got to the right place. To do that, I'm going to distribute that first set of parentheses to the second set. 1v times 1v will give me a 1v squared. 1v times 7 will give me a positive 7v. I've distributed that 1v, so now I'm going to focus on the 1 and distribute that guy out. 1 times 1v will give me a positive 1v. And 1 times 7 at the end will give me a positive 7. Last thing I have to do is combine my like terms. So 7v plus 1v will give me an 8v plus a 7, and then I've got a plus 1v squared up at the front. That's exactly where I was at the beginning, so I know that this answer is correct. I am done. Okay, at this point you're going to turn to the back side and you're going to pause. You're going to be working through these 6 problems on the back. You're looking to get your answers into their factored form so that you have 2 binomials. Check your work as you go through. You can also click continue when you're ready to check your own problems. Go ahead and get started on the back side. We'll get to going over the other problems in just a moment, but really quickly I wanted to talk a little bit about number 7 in case you got stuck on this one. So I noticed that I'm multiplying to a positive number, but I'm adding to a negative number. Why do you think that is? Okay, so maybe you realized that a positive times a positive will give me a positive number. So multiplication-wise, I can have 2 positives and they multiply to a positive. But what else multiplies to a positive number? Right, 2 negatives, so a negative times a negative gives me a positive. So if you ever have a positive, you're multiplying to a positive number, but you're adding to a negative number, what that means is that all of your factors have to be negative. So for example, here I would take negative 1 plus negative 35 to get a negative 36. And here, negative 5 plus a negative 7 will give me a negative 12. Oh, that's what I have right here. These guys must be my b values. Call me over if you're a little bit confused or if you're still a little bit confused with this problem, and we can talk a little bit more about it. Through just a couple of the answers for those of you who didn't watch along with me. For number 3, you should have ended up with 1p plus 2 times 1p plus 9. For number 4, 1v plus 1 times 1v plus 7. Let's look at the back. For number 5, and I started looking at the order, so the order of your multiplication doesn't matter. You should have 1a plus 5 times 1a minus 7, or you could have them switched around. For number 6, 1n minus 4 times 1n plus 8. Number 7, so this was the one where we talked about the negatives, you should have 1x minus 5 times 1x minus 7. Number 8, 1n plus 1 times 1n minus 3. Number 9, this was another tricky negative one, so they both had to be negative. 1x minus 6 times 1x minus 10. And lastly, number 10, you're going to have a 1n plus 1 times a 1n minus 8. Okay, and with that, check over your answers, make any corrections. If you need to, I'll zoom out so that you can see all of the work. There you go. Let me know if any questions come up. Otherwise, you can go back to your agenda and check what you should be working on next.